his fist and looked toward his hands, thinking he knew that Yuter's giant sword was the last card of Kazuya Kaio. Tempting him to do this was also his purpose. But he didn't expect that when Kazuya Kaio activated its power, he used Tabu's name. After this, Mailu, putting a hand on her heart, asks if Kazuya Kaio has disappeared, and Yangyu replies yes, including Dao Zhen. About a dozen of Yuter's residents are missing while Sheng stands beside Yangyu. Hearing this, Mailu sadly headed down and said, sure enough, that attack can't kill all the enemies. They and Kazuya Kaio must have been Sheng tells surviving Lily Empire agents. After this, Sheng tells her he asks Mailu what she plans for inner affairs, and then he urges Mailu on what she intends to do next. She looks toward him and replies she is going to Lily Empire to get Kazuya Kaio back. And when she finds him, she wants to go to a faraway place with him and subsequently have no dispute with the world. Hearing this, Sheng replies that he will respect her decision and that she will find him to live the life she wants with him. After this, Mailu turns around and goes from there, telling Sheng that since he has one Yuter, he must govern this place well, and she doesn't want to have regrets about today's defeat. While Sheng, Yangyu, and Wuli were looking toward her leaving, she suddenly stopped, turned her head, looked toward them, and said goodbye. But they don't respond and stand there silently, and then Mailu goes from there as soon as she leaves. Wuli asks Sheng, Lord, won't he tell her the truth about the death of Kazuya Kaio? Sheng was looking toward her. After this, Sheng looks up, telling Kazuya Kaio that he is dead and hoping things are as simple as that. However, Sheng, folding his arm, says he feels so tired and then asks if there are any sweets to eat. After putting his hand on his tummy, he says, logically speaking, he can neither be tired nor hungry, but with that one fast radio burst shot, surprisingly, there is a delusion of physical energy consumption. This body seems to be becoming increasingly human-like under the influence of profound life mystery. Hearing this, Yangyu stands behind him and looks toward him surprisingly. After this, Yangyu brings a honey bucket, telling Master that she has worked hard and that this is the honey she received. Meanwhile, Ba Lily pops out from the ground, putting a bucket of honey on her head, excitedly saying, little Lord Sheng, she just made a trip home and has fresh honey. Seeing this, Yangyu gets furious, stands before him, and blocks the way for Ba Lily to move toward Sheng. After this, she tells Ba Lily there is no way she is in charge of Master's well-being. She decides what he eats. Surprisingly, Sheng asks why he can't remember appointing her to such a position. On the other side, Beowu coughs, saying, Ducini, what is she waiting for? She should join too. She excitedly opened her arm, saying she got it. Then, pointing toward the dessert table, she says she is all in for Yuter's dessert shop, and today, everyone should eat whatever they want. However, every type of dessert on the table was sparkling. Seeing this, Sheng excitedly moved toward the table and asked if this human happiness of fulfilling their desires was fulfilled. After this, he starts eating excitedly, and Yangyu sits on the chair next to him angrily, looking away and asking why. Suddenly, it turns into a buffet. Everyone finds opportunities well. While eating, Sheng suddenly remembers that he has to do some task and then says now is not the time to be happy. After this, he takes out the map and shows it to all of them, telling that although he brought Yuter under his ruler for the sake of his former subject, the Yingluo clan, this city has long been regarded as possessing the Lily Empire, so their situation isn't good, and then he tells them the next trouble they must face, pointing toward the specific area on the map. It's the vast empire and its allies in the north of the world, and the premise is that there is no trouble from outside the realm. On the other side, Kazuya Kaio opens his eyes and finds himself at some strange place he doesn't understand. He moves forward and sees a cemetery where many candles are burning on the steps. On the cemetery entrance were two pillars. On those pillars, it was written that the stars fall and the moon rise, and there slumbers the winter demon. Kazuya Kaio starts climbing the stairs, thinking of the taboo name he learned by chance while unleashing the power of Yuter, which brought him there. Then he smiled, thinking this was the resting place of that taboo name while climbing the stairs. After this, he enters the cemetery, and as soon as he enters, he sees the stone statue of Sheng, who sits on grave number 99, and a girl beside him. As soon as Kazuya Kaio sees him, he takes out his sword and points it toward the stone statue of Sheng. He starts abusing him, but as he knows the stone status of Sheng, he doesn't move. He understands this is not Sheng. It's just his stone status, and he thinks this stone status scares him. At first glance, he thought it was the descendant of the ancient emperor, and then he looked toward the girl who sat there. When Kazuya Kaio asks the girl who she is, she wears the ring chain on her neck on which CB's name was written. she replies, asking him, in return, unauthorizedly uses his master's weapon and pulls his sword on his marginal exile. Hearing this, Kazuya Kaio gets scared, and his body starts disappearing. Then she says if he makes it back from there alive, the sins committed by him till this moment will be excused. Meanwhile, Kazuya Kaio's body disappears, and a black aura remains there while the stature of that girl starts turning into human form. However, she was turning into human form while this. She said, after all, she was not some devil, but it was not right. Then she clenched her fist, saying he not only learned the taboo name, but she also came there to disturb Master, indeed, who contrived that guy can't be forgotten. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. After this, CV gets up, saying did he say descendant of the ancient emperor? What a strange name, she had never heard of it, but whoever it was. She goes to the human world, grabs him, gives him a good beating, and then asks for understanding for the love of her master. Saying this, she goes from there and moves toward the human world. After this, in the southern part of the Bailey Empire, the largest territory bordering Uter in the Dermont domain of Duke Quexi. However, in the mansion of Duke Quexi, as he was sitting on his throne and Ki came there bowing before him, he welcomed her there, saying welcome back to the unsung hero of the empire, and in return, she bends before him. Replaying, she greets the Lord Duke. He smiles, saying the work she has done in Steel Art City is evident to the empire, and the unique mission bureau. Then, ask her if she can explain a little bit about what happened, but she kneels and sits there. She thinks they lost because they failed to do sufficient intelligence work on Kazuya Kaio. Hearing this, he looks toward Dao Zhen while responding to Ki. She means that the responsibility for this failure is not her, who is in charge of Steel Art City, who also sits on the chair side. Then the Duke says instead it is the information in charge of Uter, the chief of the Imperial Special Mission Bureau Dao Zhen. Hearing this, she surprisingly looks toward him. Then, she asks father what he is talking about. She doesn't understand what he means, hearing Quexi touching his head. He says he looks at his memory to fool the panel ability of Kazuya Kaio, only he knows that she used a cerebral suppressor device. After this, he goes near Dao Zhen and puts a finger in her ear, saying if he remembers right, it is the left ear. He removes the cerebral suppressor device from her ear, and then she becomes normal. As soon as she gets normal, she asks Quexi, the Lord Duke, how long it has been since she returned to the Empire. And then, putting a finger in her ear, she says he is now taking off her suppressor. His wicked taste is not flattering. He laughs, replying he is sure it's better to play his daughter so their bureau chief can be a little bit cute. Then Ki, while looking toward both of them, surprisingly thinks she sees that Dao Zhen is not the daughter of Duke Dermont. Then Ki looks toward Dao Zhen and thinks even she, a mid-level spy of the Empire, learned about this for the first time. This woman is the head of intelligence of the kingdom. If they look at the whole realm, only a dozen people have more influence than her. After this, Dao Zhen, looking toward Quexi, says, however, the Special Mission Bureau lost several agents. The strategic goal of wiping out Kazuya Kaio was achieved, and Ki didn't need to criticize Lord Duke. Then, he asks what he will do next with Uter. Quexi replies that since Kazuya Kaio has disappeared, Uter is not worth mentioning. What's more, the Empire has recently gained the support of a new ally. Dao Zhen surprisingly asked about a new partner. Quexi puts his hand in his coat and takes out the scaled feather, then replies that this is the scaled feather of the dragon ancestor and proves that the dragons are allies with the Empire. The dragon ancestor is the leader of the dragon clan, and this dragon ancestor was nobody else but Wooly, whom Lord Quexi was talking about. Then he says the strength of the current dragon ancestor is said to have stepped into the realm of the actual god level. Meanwhile, the scaled feather disappears from his hand while Quexi asks, as long as the dragon strikes, what qualification does that female dwarf in Steel Art City have to fight against the Empire? Hearing this, Dao Zhen remembers something and asks those dragons. Then she smiles, saying good before the Imperial forces attack Uter, she will give him one more helping hand. However, on Sheng's side, Madame Li puts her hand on her shoulder and looks towards Sheng, informing according to the result of today's inspection, Uter's daily activities have all returned to normal functioning. Hearing this, Sheng replies he didn't expect her to be so gifted in handling political affairs, and it seems to be acceptable to leave Uter in her hands entirely. Hearing Sheng's words, she gets happy and starts blushing. She says he flatters her. After this, she asks, but does she no longer need to disguise herself as Ki? Won't his enemies be suspicious? Sheng laughs, telling the real Ki has returned to where she belongs and continues to play her role, which he knows in the back of his mind. As soon as she tries to reach out to him and moves her hand toward him, seeing this, he He tells him where she is, trying to pat his head and hold back for him. Meanwhile, Yang Yu ran toward both of them, telling them to get out of her way. Seeing this, they were surprised. She ran toward Sheng, saying she must quickly say this news to Master, seeing her approaching him fast. Sheng thinks this scene seems a bit familiar. If he makes the same mistake a second time, then it would be too shameful to change the name of an ancient emperor. Then he remembered the time when she fell on top of him, and then he looked toward the front part of her body, and he backed off, then sighed, closely thinking. An Unaju falls on Madame Li. After this, she shows him the mobile phone, telling him it is not good. Master looks at this. Sheng is holding the mobile phone and reads the news, saying this is a shock. This news was about Sheng, and it was written that the ancient demon lord had returned after 1,000 years. Also, Yuder has fallen. Steel Art City assists and terrorizes and is willing to become his lapdog and bullet eyes. Danger, the devil with a human face, has gone on a killing spree in Yuder, and the number of people killed has reached hundreds. The world may face an all-out war in the year of a dictatorship about to return. Yang Yu shouts, telling them it's just too much. Master is not such a person, much less have done such a thing. Hearing this, Sheng laughs, and then Yang Yu surprisingly asks why Master laughs instead. Sheng returned her mobile phone, saying that's how it was. Thanks a lot for the reminder, and gathering everyone immediately. He has something important to tell them all. However, Sheng met with Ducini, Yang Yu, and all of his companions, and he told them the war had already begun. Then he says it's a war of public opinion. Ducini asks why his true identity has not been made public, so why does the Empire know about it? Beowu, watching the news on the mobile phone, says the kingdom has restored to this tactic. However, Sheng replies that the Empire does not need to know his identity. He only needs to insist that he is the ancient emperor, and the goal will be achieved. Hearing this, Tu Shuya surprisingly asks so little Sheng is going to become a public enemy of the world, and Wu Li asks what they should do. Sheng showing them the map tells the war of polemics is not terrible, but the battle of public opinion alerted him that his eyes can no longer be confined to the Bilili Empire alone. He must stay and personally oversee to take on the Empire. At the same time, he has also prepared 3 routes he would like to trouble everyone to help. And from his old capital to the Sky Curtain Sea, let this world, after 1,000 years, know that the king most qualified to rule over them has returned. Li, Ducini, Beowu, Yang Yu, Wu Li, and Tu Shuya listen to him carefully. After this, they plan and start their work according to their plan. The next day, at the Bailey Empire border checkpoint, Wu Li gets out of the car. The security guard lady asks her if she is a Yuder refugee, and Wu Li replies yes. Also, if not for the recent turmoil in Yuder, her lord would not have come to the Bailey Empire to seek asylum. Hearing this, the female security guard gets suspicious and looks toward the lady sitting in the car, and she asks the lord if she has her draconic lineage right, and if her lord can afford to hire a dragon newt to be his servant. However, Wu Li showed her the payment proof, which is proof of the lord's assets in the North Union Bank, to confirm the authenticity. The guard is stunned to see the proof of payment and thinks of this amount. After this, she bends her head before Wu Li and welcomes her to the Bailey Empire. She also says to enjoy their safety in the kingdom, and the lady from the car, in a lower tone, tells Wu Li to hurry up and that they should go now. Hearing this, Wu Li bent her head, saying right, lord, while looking at the lady in the car. After this, the security guard looks toward the lady lord in the car, thinking that the lord in the vehicle has a lot of money, while the lord looks at her elegantly in return. The security woman is impressed by her beauty, thinking what a beautiful woman, and then they go from there. The security guard, looking toward their car entering the Bilili Empire, believes the work at the checkpoint would be much easier if all the refugees coming to the kingdom were of this caliber. However, in the car, Wu Li, while driving, asks her lord if it is this easy to pass through the checkpoint of the empire, and the lady dissipated that because she came to the kingdom as a capital holder. As she replies, Sheng's mimicry appears on Lady Lord's hair and body, and Lady Lord transforms into Sheng, who disguises himself as the beautiful lady. After this, Sheng tells Bilili that the capitalist aristocracy fully controls the empire, and has a highly developed financial industry. In the eyes of their capitalists, outsiders like him have only 2 choices: join them and be eaten by them. And Wu Li, while driving the car, replies she understands the lord. Then Wu Li says they think they will not lose on their chessboard, so they dare to allow immigrants like him to enter the empire. Then she asks where all this money comes from, and Sheng replies to Steel Art City's foreign exchange reserves he took. Hearing this, she asks, however, isn't their biggest concern at the moment the war of public opinion the empire is waging against him? Even with that large sum of money, she fears it won't save his reputation. Sheng smiles and replies that the Bilili Empire is commercial, and industrial, and that responding only to the doctrine is pointless. Then Sheng smiles with his hand on hand and says the actual counterattack should go straight to the heart of the matter. However, in the Balili Empire Stock Exchange, many people were working there. A guy named Huoxu Lai confusingly stood holding his head while reading a newspaper, thinking, why is this? What ancient emperor is what terrorizing demon? And this kind of news is deliberately hyped. However, in the newspaper, there was news about Sheng. When he returns to the ancient demon lord after 1,000 years, Steel, Art City assists, terrorizes, and is willing to become his lapdog and bullet eye. Also, the devil with a human face has gone on a killing spree in Uter, and the number of people killed has reached 100. After reading the newspaper, Huoxu Lai got angry, thinking military and crude oil stocks are rising. What an utter mess, even virtual goods are growing so much. It just had to happen. Meanwhile, Ma Ying came behind him, asking his name and briefly introducing herself. However, this lady was Ma Ying, the executive president of Marlow Military Industries. The lady said to Huoxu Lai that it seemed that the empire was about to go to war. Although Marlow has only just received the order, word of it has spread among the masses. She was so busy the other day that she could only take a little break today. Saying this, she felt proud of herself. After this, she pats Huoxu's shoulder, asking which is his gold business sister still going strong. Huoxu Lai removed her hand from his shoulder and replied that he didn't need her to take care of his business. Hearing this, she smiles, saying gold is good stuff. When there is a war, everyone is willing to exchange their money for gold to hedge their bets. But that only happens in countries that have been reduced to battlefields, and no matter how he thinks about it, there is no way this war will burn in the Empire's territory. Huoxu Lai angrily looks toward him, then she smiles, saying that the next time they meet, she hopes he will end up as a broken man in the street. Saying this, she leaves. Huoxu Lai, looking toward her angrily, thinks Ma Ying is this stinky lass. She has always looked down on men and investment. And now she is a little bit more developed, she is still just a stinky face. The return on gold investment was always supposed to be stable, and it's all because of this group of treacherous businessmen who wish for the world's chaos, creating public opinion every day to fish in troubled waters. Something has to be done to turn the situation around, otherwise, the gold business in his hands will go bankrupt. Meanwhile, Sheng comes there, he disguises himself from behind as the same beautiful woman he called Huoxu Lai. Huoxu turns back angrily, asking who has come to mock him again. They guys are not done. But as soon as he looks toward that stunning lady, he gets surprised. After this, Sheng, who disguises that beautiful lady judging by his reaction, seems to have had a lousy lady, and then smiles. Huoxu Lai was thoroughly impressed by her beauty. He came close to her, asking who she was. Then the lady replied that it was their first meeting, and her name was Xin Sheng. Someone had introduced him as the Empire's largest gold investor, so she visited him. Huoxu Lai closes her eyes and replies that if she wants to invest in gold, he advises her to stop, and in this day and age, the gold business is no longer suitable. As soon as the lady says he misunderstood, she is not even the slightest bit in gold. She is just looking for an agent. Hearing this, he quickly opens his eyes. Then, Sheng close to him and putting her hand on his shoulder, she lovingly asks who can help her win the Empire's stock market at the suitable time to plunge off the Empire's military stocks. On the other side, in the Balil Empire, the demoted domain of Duke Quexi sitting on his throne, Dao Zhen, the Miss Bureau Chief, has the response been from the New South Democratic Alliance in the last few days. She mutters and replies, what other reaction could there be? Isn't it just verbally opposing hegemony, and taking the opportunity to gossip enigmatically? While sitting there folding her legs and holding a tablet, she said that even if the new Southern Democratic Alliance wanted to intervene with their troops, the Empire could occupy the entire territory of Uter before their troops even arrived. Then, showing him the new Southern Democratic Alliance map on a tablet, she tells him that unless they launch missiles, that would be tantamount to a direct declaration of war against the Empire. Then, looking toward Duke Quexi, she says the kingdom is cleaning up the mess at its doorsteps, and it is not yet the turn of the rival across the sea to dictate. Hearing this, Quexi asks what about the Uter's side. She replies the Stellart city is mobilizing its army from door to door, and they seem to be preparing to fight an all-out war. Hearing this, Quexi smiles, saying what era it is. They are asking for an all-out war under the saturated attack of absolute superiority. An outwar would be just tuning the entire population into cannon fodder. After this, she says sea surveillance also did not find any suspicious ships in the sea. Their warships are staying quietly in their military ports. Hearing this, Quexi quiver, speaking too slowly. Their response is prolonged. What the hell are the leaders of Uter up to, sitting and waiting for death? Then he angrily puts a hand on one side of his face, says Amashiroi. When the Imperial Army is fully organized, he will not hesitate to take the southern peninsula of the Empire. However, at Sheng's side, as he was in that beautiful lady's disguise and on the ground, he was playing golf while Hokusai Lai stood aside and clapped, saying, "Amazing Miss Sheng Xin." He could tell if it was her first time playing golf. Sheng's smile replays Mr. Hokusai Lai's overpraising, which is probably novice luck. At the same time, Hokusai Lai is enchanted, saying he would love to introduce them all to the noble ladies of the Empire, and show them that a modest lady is the most beautiful. Sheng stood there, smiling. Meanwhile, Ma Ying comes from behind, saying hello again to Hokusai Lai, angrily looking toward her. She says, still looking for a beautiful girl for rendezvous regardless of what happened to his gold. Looking toward her, he angrily asks Ma Ying, and she decides when he should rest and work. Hearing this, she replies this is a golf course wholly owned by RH Marlowe Group, of which she is a shareholder, and then asks if it is wrong to warn their member with goof intention, and if he loses his money until he goes bankrupt, they will lose an important customer. Hearing this, he abused her while extending his hand toward her, saying don't bully others too much. Meanwhile, the security guard comes from behind, grabs Hokusai Lai's arm, and then, putting his hand on his shoulder, tells him to calm down. Ma Sheng, pointing toward Hokusai Lai, ordered the security guard to throw this guy out. He wanted to assault her. After this, the security guard grabbed him by the arm and dragged him from there while he was abusing her. While Ma Sheng smiles, looking toward him, thinking she wants to fight her. He doesn't have that capital now. After this, she extends her hand toward Sheng, saying she is already sorry about that. Also, she made her see such a terrible scene. Sheng smiles and puts a hand on her heart. She replies no, and she has to think of her for that. Because Hokusai Lu kept bugging her and insisted on showing his golf skills, she just took the fall for her. Hearing this, Ma Sheng asks if she is doing a good thing, and then she briefly introduces herself and tells Sheng about the company for which she is working. After this, Sheng smiles and briefly introduces herself, telling her she just came with her family from Uter to take refuge in the Balili Empire, and her family is doing some small business. Still, it's not all as good as the members who play gold there. Then she takes out the golf ball, telling and, in return, helping her out, and then she requests Ma Sheng to accept this gift. After this, Ma Sheng holding that ball gets suspicious, asking what she means. Sheng, blinking one eye, replies this is not an ordinary golf ball but the latest amulet developed by Steel Art City. She only got a few by chance, then she fumbled and requested her to allow her to show her its primary function. Hearing this, Ma Sheng was surprised. After this, Sheng took out a gun and fired while pointing it toward Ma Sheng. Seeing this, she was frightened, asking what she was doing to stop it. Seeing this gun, she fell backward in fear, and a fire came out of a weapon, which disappeared near her face. Meanwhile, the security guard ran toward her, asking if she was all right. She was petrified, saying what the hell is this? Sheng smile replying, this little ball is pre-programmed with most of the world's weaponry data. It just has to identify the preset weapons within a specific range, and then it can reverse integrate them into fragments and particles. Ma Sheng gets up, asking particular content about how extensive this range is. Sheng says the model in her hand has a defensive radius of 1 to 2 meters. It can only be used for personal security. And this one supposedly has a defensive radius of 100 meters. It can protect the whole family. Tell this, and she reveals it. Ma Sheng started sweating while thinking a radius of 100 meters could distinguish all words impossible. When did Steel Art City have such technological strength? Sheng, giving it to Ma Sheng, says that in return for saving her just now, she will give her these 2 amulets as gifts. Although it's not a great gift, someone of her stature will not mind extra later in life insurance. Then she gracefully holds her dress and says she wishes her peace and health from the bottom of her heart. Moreover, in the Marlowe Military Industries weapon testing area, Ma Sheng puts that amulet on the table before her thin life insurance. She is kidding. This stuff isn't for personal safety, although she can't fully trust that woman named Sheng. But she can give away such things without regret, just in case what she said is true. However, an explosion occurs, and she starts sweating. Then, she asks Empire if it is possible to combat the Conqueror. On the other side, Wooly brings the picture of the weapon and explosion to Sheng, and then she goes from there. After this, Sheng calls Hokusai Lai there. I order him to distribute it and not make a big deal out of it. It's enough to hand it over to the financial groups quietly. They control the stock markets, and they will do all the rest of the work for them. Sheng hands over it to him, and he takes it, telling him to leave it to him. However, Duke Quexi angrily slammed a hand on the table and asked what the hell was going on. Steel Art City built a weapon that the Empire could deal with. Military-industrial group stocks went from up to down, and the Marlow military-industrial group in their territory has taken the brunt of this fall. Red Raven, captain of the Duke, bent down before him, telling him the information is entirely authentic, Lord. Rumors are circulating outside that he, the Duke, is planning to cancel many military orders. It's even being said that the Empire might call off the war. Hearing this, he angrily asks if it's just a golf ball-sized artifact. These stock market opportunities, are they looking down on his army? Then he extends his hand toward her, telling them he will take care of the disturbance in the open. He orders her to go and find out who created these rumors. She puts her hand on her heart and, bending her head before him, and replies follow the order. She will immediately present the Duke what he requested. On Sheng's side, Hoxulai was eating food and was so lost in his food that he didn't even know what was happening around him. While Sheng was sitting on the chair in front of him and Wu Li sat beside Sheng's chair, Lady Sheng looked toward Hoxulai gracefully, saying, please exercise a little restraint. How he looks now will make the ladies turn away. Hearing this, Hoxulai coughs and replies while setting him that excuse him he is not happy about that. Then he tells Lady Sheng that the Empire has begun to fear Uter, which might turn war into the peace. Investors are not optimistic and are selling military stocks, causing stocks to fall. His old rivals who like to invest in the military industry have lost money and can do nothing about it. No matter how she looks at it, this is a joyful treat. He asks Lady Sheng if he should hurry to gather funds and prepare to buy military stocks. Lady Sheng gracefully replies that he is too optimistic and that the confrontation is starting now. As they were talking inside the room, suddenly they felt a rustle outside the window. Wu Li got alert and looked toward the window, and there she saw a black aura hanging there. She asked, outside the window, was there a person depending? Hoxulai started looking around, asking where Miss Dragon Newt was. She might be mistaken while Lady Sheng was sitting there in serious mode. Meanwhile, Red Raven patted Hoxulai Shold's hand from behind, calling his name and asking if he had introduced the lady before him to Ma Ying of the Marlow group that day. Hearing this, he turns his head, and suddenly, a strong gust of wind starts blowing. Wu Li takes out her sword and asks the Red Raven who she is. Red Raven replies, asking Wu Li Dragon if it is a dragon newt. Exciting information, she must report accurately to Lord Duke. Wu Li suddenly thrusts and, while moving toward her, holding her sword, replies that following the imperial law against trespassers, the owner has the right to fight back in self-defense. Wu Li passes her dagger from the Red Raven's bosom, and her spud opens. However, Red Raven says at least level 70 strength from lower to the middle of crazy. Exciting information, great harvest. While Wu Li still stands before her, holding her sword, which passes through into Red Raven's bosom. Suddenly, Red Raven starts to shatter and crumble, and then she starts disappearing. While Wu Li's sword is left there, shards of glass that remain there fall on the ground, and she disappears from there, saying she can live till the next time. Seeing this, Wu Li surprisingly asks not her original body, and Lady Sheng replies she is a talisman master, and the one just now was her paper double. Hoxulai stands there frightened, holding one hand on the table and the other on his heart. He says this is not good. That person is the captain of Duke Quexi's guard, Red Raven. To be targeted by her means that the Duke intends to take action himself while Lady Sheng sees a paper lying on the floor. Then she tells the Red Raven lady seems to be there to deliver a message. Wu Li picked that paper up and started reading it as per Sheng's order. While reading it, she asked if this was a newsletter. On Duke Quexi's side, media and press people were there, and he was there. Duke Quexi communicated with them. Media people also questioned him and captured his pictures. Quexi welcomes them all in his residence, and then he looks toward Rong Dia as she sits beside him, the chair next to him, and tells the media and press that he formally introduces to her this distinguished guest, the new ally of the Empire. She is the current dragon ancestor of the dragon clan Sang Yuji, and her strength has long crossed the 100-level threshold of god level, and has reached a superior god level. Then he tells the media that the Dragon Clan also brings them a fantastic secret, and then he starts his speech by reading the paper lying on the table before him and telling the media. 1,000 years ago, the ancient emperor unified all living things and implemented a unified language and script for all races passed down to this day. The truth, however, is that the eternal emperor is covering up the validity of the world and the unification of language by doing so. Writing prevents others from accessing a mysterious power with the correct ritual, and using particular pronunciations to call specific names. Anyone can acquire a terrifying battle, and the Empire's military industry will work with the dragons to discover the truth about this power. Then he extended his hand, saying that at that time, no matter what weapon and technologies, none of them would be an opponent of the Empire. They were referred to as prayers of the gods. They are also known as taboo names. While on Lady Sheng's side, she gave a gloomy look at the letter, then she put it on the table and blinked her eyes, telling Hoxu lie for the sake of the stock price, and he said whatever. However, the current dragon ancestor is that child, Shang Yuji. Lady Sheng smiles, looking out the window, saying she knows what steps to take next to counteract. However, at the banquet of Duke's Quexi mansion, Ma Ying stands there, and the people standing around her congratulate her on the news of the alliance between the dragon and the Empire. This is now the front page headline of all media. It is a natural source of pride for the kingdom that her company can cooperate with the Dragon Clan to prepare for the war against Yuder. Also, the people chattered there. Ma Ying smiled, all thanks to the Duke's trust that their company had this opportunity, and the Marlowe Group stock had risen by only 10%. While telling this, she thinks Marlowe Groups is making a big profit in the stock market this time. The price of gold that the stinking man had invested in has plummeted because everyone took their money to buy stocks as the most prominent gold investor in the Empire. He is probably crying with gold bricks in his arms. Suddenly, someone standing beside her, looking toward Lady Sheng and Wu Li, asks if a dragon and a half-blooded draconian. Both of them are beautiful ladies, just who are they? Hearing this, Ma Xing turned back to look. Seeing them there, Ma Xing angrily thought it was the woman who was with Hoxu Lai that day, and because of her, their stock price almost fell apart. However, Dao Zhen welcomed Lady Sheng with two distinguished guests to the banquet of the Duke's mansion. Then, she briefly introduces herself to Lady Sheng, telling her she is the Duke's eldest daughter, Dao Zhen. Please forgive her for not being able to welcome them. However, Wu Li stands beside Lady Sheng and is surprised to see Dao Zhen there. Then, she surprisingly asks Miss Dao Zhen how she is. Seeing Wu Li there, Dao Zhen gets surprised and then says she remembers how she ended up there. Looking at Dao Zhen, Lady Sheng says they too seem to have some story. Why don't they sit down first? After this, the three of them stand there. With a saddened face, Dao Zhen replies to Lady Sheng that's true, but it's a long story. While Mai Xing and many people stand aside, she listens to them secretly, thinking they have an account. While Duke Quexi stood up, he looked toward them, surprised to see Dao Zhen in a long conversation with the guest. After these three of them sit there, Dao Zhen clatters the cup of tea, and tells them she was initially taken to the square with Mai Lu on the day of the attack. When the power of Yuder's great sword was unleashed, she was suddenly teleported to some place in the wild and taken away by other agents she encountered while she got sorrowful telling her story. She didn't know until she saw her father after returning home that the dragon had decided to cooperate with the Empire. Some of the Empire's warriors had learned dragon magic. The teleportation magic of dragons took her away, although he is a rebellious daughter in her father's eye. After all, she still possesses the status of the eldest daughter. He wants to use her as a political tool. Then she sniffles, telling her she doesn't expect what happened that day to turn out as it did today. She also hears that Kazuya Kaio is missing and genuinely sorry. Hearing this, Wu Li says that now the matter is over, Miss Dao Zhen shouldn't blame herself. Wu Li recalls saying she was initially a mercenary and a father with long-term activity in Steel Arts City. That time, she was suddenly approached by Qi and asked to become a bodyguard for a child. She was willing to pay a high price to hire an expert. After the incident, she realized it was a scam, so she left Yuder and returned to Steel Arts City. Then, pointing toward Lady Sheng, she says there she met her current master, Sheng Xin, who was willing to hire her permanently as her escort to the Empire for business. Lady Sheng wipes her tears by adding her point in the conversation that her escort and the Duke's daughter had this story, making people unable to hold back tears. However, the three of them sitting there think in their mind about themselves that her acting is superb. After this, Dao Zhen says that, as far as she knows, dragons are around by nature. Then she asks how she could be willing to work for someone as a mercenary. Heard this, Lady Sheng smiled, saying it was a coincidence that she finally won the qualification for the banquet at the ducal mansion this time. She wanted to speak with Lord Duke about this matter, and then Lady Sheng closed her eyes and told her family Sheng's group operates a modest metal goods business in Steel Arts City. Because of local history, her family is interested in the dragon race that served the Eternal Emperor. Telling this, she takes out the metal juice. There is reliable evidence that dragons have one of the most remarkable characteristics. They have ristics and love to eat metal. Seeing this, all standing up, Duke Quexi gets alert, and then Lady Sheng swirls the straw into the glass and tells Wooly to come near her. Seeing this, Wooly is surprised, and then she goes and sits near Lady Sheng. There, Sheng tells her to open her mouth. After this, Wooly opens her mouth, and Lady Sheng puts that spoon in her mouth. Wooly nibbles that metal. As soon as the metal goes into her body, she feels delighted. Then, after drinking 2 and 3 spoonfuls of that metal, she wipes her mouth, and the lady sitting aside tells her it doesn't matter if the dragon doesn't eat metal, but the taste of suitable metal can't only make their mood but can also stabilize their strength. After the Sheng shakes that metal in the glass, saying, "This is Miss Wooly's favorite metal, a particular semi-liquid alloy with silver as the main component. Only Sheng's group can make it in Steel Art City, so it was not difficult for her to recruit Miss Wooly." After this, Lady Sheng gives the metal biscuit to her, telling her to eat dragon-like, a different metal, but she denies it. But when Lady Sheng gives her the metal drink glass, Wooly is happy to see that metal glass. Then Lady Sheng says those who love alloys and single metals need unique alloying and purification processes. Then, putting a hand on her face, she smiled, telling Dao Zhen that if she met a picky eater, it's not easy to please them. Wooly gets shocked, thinking, does Lord dislike her palate? Also, when she saw the picture of a dragon ancestor allied with an empire on the news, she immediately became aware of it. The current dragon ancestor she has studied longer than Wooly thinks ago. She is associated with the empire, most likely in exchange for her favorite metal. Lady Sheng smiled, saying just like 1,000 years ago as Lady Sheng was about to speak to the dragon ancestor Shang Yuji's favorite metal. Mai Sheng and her companion pay attention to the metal's name while Dao Zhen tells her to wait. Meanwhile, Duke Quexi stands up and shouts, saying, "Moron, he can't be on this occasion." Lady Sheng is sitting there, closing her eyes, extending her hand toward the glass, and says extraction of pure gold. Then she opened her eyes, hoping the Lord Duke would be attentive to please the dragon ancestor and protect the Empire's military prosperity. After this, Wooly and Lady Sheng leave, and the people there start discussing each other. One of them asks if he heard of the dragon ancestor that has allied with the Empire like metal. The other further replies by asking if he is referring to the dragon ancestor alone, as he heard all dragon-like gold hearing. The other one says that fighting Uter also depends on the power of the dragon clan, which means dragons are very important to the Empire. The boy standing before him says he can't help but get along with them. Don't buy stocks for now, hurry up and buy gold. On the other side, Duke Quexi bangs his fist hard on the table, asking the Red Raven if she has heard that gold merchant Huoxu Lai and a woman named Sheng Xin are playing this trick behind the scenes. Is that right? She bends over and replies the information is entirely authentic. Lord, hearing this, ordered her to bring both of them to him, and if they didn't cooperate, make them commit suicide with 3 shots in the back. And then she put a hand on her heart, saying, "Abide by the order." She will immediately present the Duke with the requested thing. However, on Sheng's side, Wooly and Huoxu Lai come to the garden. Huoxu Lai shows them the cherry tree and the whole place. As soon as they enter that place, the leaves from the tress start falling, and they feel some rustle there. However, they sit there in the garden and open the food bucket. Huoxu Lai, sitting there, tells Sheng and Wooly that the thin chrysanthemum cherry there is quite famous throughout the empire, and has a renowned legend. And it is said that 1,000 years ago, the ancient emperor passed by this place and slept overnight while the leaves were falling on Sheng. Then Huoxu Lai smiled, saying that since then, there has not been a single death of the chrysanthemum cherry tree there, and the flowers bloom on time every year. Then he asked Lady Sheng if she liked this chrysanthemum cherry. As the leaves were falling on her, she popped the leaf and said she wanted the petals of the chrysanthemum cherry tree, because they reminded her of something else. Huoxu Lai stared at Wooly as they talked, but she turned around. Then Lady Sheng smiles, telling her it is still a place of nostalgia. She thanks her for inviting her to enjoy the cherry blossom. After this, Huoxu Lai opened the wine bottle and started pouring the glass, then smiled, saying to celebrate the big jump in the price of gold, he would offer a drink first. Then, holding the mirror, he says that working with her has been his most incredible fortune this year, and military stocks are slowly starting to fall. Then, while giving her this glass, he asks what they will do next. Taking a sip, Lady Sheng replies, "It's time to deal with a personal crisis." Hearing this, he gets unsure, asking about unique problems, and then she drinks the juice and replies this is a famous place to enjoy cherry blossom, which is in full bloom right now. Then Lady Sheng asks Huoxu Lai if he isn't curious why he can't see any other vision. A red raven taps behind him, and he gets scared. Wooly took out her sword while Lady Sheng ordered her to take Huoxu Lai away. This was her order. Wooly said, grabbed Huoxu Lai, and flew from there. While Huoxu Lai was shouting and calling Miss Xin Sheng, Lady Sheng sat down and a red raven stood before her. After this, the red raven waves her hand and starts piercing the talisman. These talismans turn into a magic arrow, and a black eagle comes and sits on her shoulder. Then the eagle flaps the amulet, and the charm gets ripped and floats down. The eagle goes and sits on Sheng's shoulder. Then Sheng says Talisman Master Red Raven is clear in purpose and deceives in action entirely without superfluous words. And then she asks what an excellent minion is. Then she ordered the crow to counterattack without restriction. And then the crow started flying and singing the song of the lost souls. Then the crow spurted out and cut the red raven's neck. Seeing this, Red Raven said substitute life talisman. However, the blood starts flowing from her neck while she wipes the blood, saying it turns out to be the highest level direct death skill of level crazy exciting information. Sheng orders the crow to continue to attack. And then the crow starts singing the song of the lost souls and soul suppression bell and shoots the red raven. But that bird doesn't have any effect on her standing there. She says not enough that the bird can't kill her. However, Lady Sheng says the substitute life talisman can offset one death for the talisman master, one amulet for one life, and her substitute talisman. She asks if this is thin chrysanthemum cherry petals. The red raven standing there replies right now, it is the blossoming period of the chrysanthemum cherry. And she doesn't know how many thousands of flowers and petals cover this mountain. After this, she takes out that talisman card, telling her that this is the Red Raven's home turf, and that the Red Raven will present the Duke with what he asks for. Then she happily dances and, holding her talisman card, orders her card to forbidden talisman circulation. And then the card starts circulating Sheng. After this, while preserving the card, she says Duke has been waiting for her for a long time, ceasing her pointless struggle. Sheng, standing there, replies, confining her with a rune formation, and then teleports to a predetermined location. Then she lovingly soothes that crow, saying there is no need to be nervous. Then it gets dark and starts shining, and Sheng says it's over. Here this red raven smiles, saying her self-awareness is admirable. Sheng, closing her eyes, replies she seems to be misunderstanding something. Miss Raven. Then she chuckled, saying when she said it over, she meant the blossoming period, and Red Raven reacted to it while laughing. Then she asks what is going on. Suddenly, the petal was wet, and when she saw this red raven, she got shocked and questioned the petals of the chrysanthemum cherry. All of them weakened. Sheng smiled, asking if she had heard the legend of the great ancient emperor who unified every living thing. It was not only the higher intelligent beings drifting plants, rustle insects, fungi, bacteria, and viruses. Telling this, he released and extended his mimicry into trees and underground, telling them that as long as they are alive, there is a willingness to submit to governance. Everything is unified, and this is the unity of all living things. Hearing this, Red Raven asks about sorcery trickery, and if it is the power of the demon realm. Sheng replies, saying instead of thinking nonsense, why not worry about her situation as her chrysanthemum cherry petal substitute life talisman seems to have vanished. Then, the Red Raven, using her talisman card, says it is an excellent harvest. Suddenly, her whole body and talisman card turn into a crow, and these crows fly away individually. Her body started disappearing and turning into a raven, but before completely disappearing, she told Sheng to stay alive till the next time. As she completely disappears, the raven feather falls on Sheng's hand while turning into cherry tree petals. Seeing the petals in his hand, Sheng has engraved loyalty into her genetic information, looking like this is still his domain. After this, Sheng crushed the petals, saying they must not have another time, as the raven was sitting on Sheng's shoulder. Meanwhile, Wooly taps there, and as soon as Wooly comes there, the raven on Sheng's shoulder flays away. Wooly comes there with a sad face, saying she is exceptionally sorry, Lord, because Mr. Huoxu Lai was snatched away. Hearing this, Sheng smiles, saying it doesn't matter. Let's go to pick him up. However, in Duke Quexi's mansion, Red Raven bows before Lord Quaxi, telling Red Ravney failed to request Lord Duke for punishment. Quexi, sitting on his throne, asks, even if she can't handle her, what kind of power does this woman named Shang Xin have that makes her so fearless? Meanwhile, Shang Yuji came there, informing her it went very well on her end, and no dragon could defy the dragon ancestor. Being a dragon, her attendant saved her from a lot of trouble. Telling this, she blindfolded Huoxu Lai, tied his hands behind his back, grabbed him, and threw him to the ground before Duke Quexi. Seeing him there, Duke Quexi stands up angrily, saying not to mention this man is not too valuable for them, and then he orders them to detain him and interrogate him about everything he knows. Red Raven grabs him from there while Shang Yi runs around and goes from there. While leaving there, she thinks a weak human race can't even do well against an inferior of their kind. While on the way out, Shang Yuji thinks this weak empire holds information about the taboo name without giving them a bit of sweetness, and this group of people will not easily hand over the confidential secret. After this, she goes outside the lawn and sits on a chair, then waves her hand and orders the servants to ask if they have pure gold to bring over one. Meanwhile, Lady Shang and Wooly come there. Shang calls her from behind. She turns to see and then angrily asks how dare she call her by her real name. Lady Shang and Wooly step forward to her, replaying for her that it has been a long time. She surprisingly asks who she is. Lady Shang takes off her glasses, saying this is a trial, and suddenly, she turns into Shang's authentic appearance, telling testimony of whether she has overcome the naivety of the past. Test whether there is Crowfin while holding his deity trident. He says every answer she gives next will determine the fate that will befall her and all the dragons. Shang Yuji. Seeing Shang's authentic appearance, she gets scared and stands up, then hesitates to ask if he is Xin Sheng. No, he is Xin Sheng, but not precisely him. Then Shang asks what makes her say that. She replies that 1,000 years ago, the ancient emperor Xin Sheng's spiritual power was mysterious and unpredictable, and it was impossible to figure it out. But the one in front of her, no matter how he looks at it, is just immortal. Hearing this, Shang says spiritual power is the visionary strength that sees through the essence of spirit, and it seems that her dragon eye has been cultivated to the limit. Meanwhile, Shang Yuji's eyes start glowing. Looking toward her, Shang says she trusts her judgment of spiritual power more. Then Shang asks if she thinks he isn't Xin Sheng but a fake who imitates Xin Sheng. After this, Shang Yuji looks toward Wooly angrily and says Yuan Lai as she tells her to keep a good eye on this person. After she handed over Huoxu Lai, she never thought she would continue to follow her orders and even ring her to her without permission. Hearing this, Wooly gets scared and starts sweating. Then Shang Yuji angrily looks toward Wooly and says she will give her one last chance to make amends and kill her. Wooly asks, hearing Shang Yuji extend her hand, asking what he wants to rebel against the dragon ancestor. Wooly replies that's. Meanwhile, Shang takes off his authentic appearance, that blue mimicry from his body, and gets normal like before. As he gets normal like before, he smiles at Wooly. She hesitates to see him, and Wooly is shocked. Then Shang smiles as he gets normal like before, turning his head toward Wooly. He says if he were her king, he would not make her hesitate about what to choose. Instead, he would make her follow his footprints willingly and walk through the thorny paths he has taken. After this, Shang reaches out and says he orders her while his eye starts glowing and says, "Stand by and watch." Hear this, Wooly was shocked, and then she bent down and replied yes as he called. Seeing this, Shang Yigu angrily says to Shang he was able to stimulate the dragon ancestors. Dragon might then ask what kind of skill that divine level mimicry is. Then she chuckles, saying no wonder he is so brave, outstanding. He has successfully touched her inverse scale. Saying this, she runs towards Shang to attack him. But Shang stood still there, and she reached near him, hugged him, and bit his shoulder. Shang still stood there, saying not to be outdone very much in her style, Shang Yuji. But she should have noticed that his guard, Bao Sang now, is unconcerned. Meanwhile, a death bird appears floating there while Shang Yigu stands holding Shang. Shang stands there and says she isn't even attacking, just playing around. Hearing this, she releases Shang from that bite. While jumping away from Shang and looking toward him, she thought her physical combat ability was at least level 120 and higher according to the current world strength rating. But this guy's weakness is spiritual power, thinking she uses her excellent dream realm, and they both enter into different worlds. Shang was standing in that smile saying great dream realm, the secret technique of spiritual isolation of the dragon clan. However, while entering the other world, she disappears. Looking around, Shang says that the outside world's bragging about her ability at the upper divine level isn't completely nonsense. Meanwhile, a substantial blue eye opens and starts gazing at Shang, then replies, telling her to look at her mental image of a weak mortal child, the same as before. And if he still dares to taunt and mess with the dragon clan, don't expect to leave alive. After this, that eye gives the first dream of sinful desire punishment to Shang, and a sword-like blade pierces Shang's body. Standing there injured, Shang smiles, asking for sin. Then he cracks that blade and gets cured, telling his body and heart were born as a king, and everything he does is his kingly way. Then he asks what sin he has. Hear this, his eye gets shocked, and then he says, impossible. How can innocent people be in this world if the look gives them a second punishment? The second dream is spiritualization into a corpse stacked to his body all around, standing there. Shang replies if the kingly way is to be attached to a specific soul, it is nothing more than a person's obsession. However, Sheng swoosh and frees himself from that dragon tactic, saying he wants to pursue it even if he ceases to exist. It can also be practiced by everything under heaven, as the kingly way of hearing this, the eye says, is unbelievable. There shouldn't be any match against this one heavenly move, and then the eye asks how in the world he did this. Sheng replies that if he remembers correctly, there are 7 dreams in the fantastic realm, then asks if his strength is only cultivated in the 3rd dream. Still not going to stop the eye, he hesitates and asks if he also obtained the power of the taboo name and doesn't think he can scorn the dignity of the dragon that way. However, the eye gives a 3rd punishment to Sheng, and this time, the sentence is the 3rd realm heart-eating poison. And now, Sheng was standing in the cloud, and Yongyu and Tu Shuya stepped toward him from both sides. He looks toward both of them, then squishes and hugs him tightly. He stood between them. Yongyu called him master, and Tai Shuya told little Sheng he was sorry they had failed their mission. Then Tu Shuya, in a playful mood, asks little Sheng if he will blame them, but it is okay because they have met a better master willing to forgive them. Saying this, Tu Shuya pierces her nail into Sheng's body, and Yongyu stabs a dagger into Sheng's body. He stands there, looks up, and blood starts flowing from his body. Sheng, injured, standing there putting his hand on his stomach, asks Yongyu and Tu Shuya to tell him their reason for doing this. Tu Shuya puts her bloody nail on her leg and then smiles, telling her there is no particular reason. Then he looks to Unaju, who also tells him it is just annoying for him to be on top all the time. Shen smiled, saying is this it, and fell as he had lost a lot of his blood. As soon as he fell, his head thuds on the floor. Shang Yigu came there asking if his proper form had been revealed. In the end, his spiritual power was no more than that. However, that world disappears, and they enter the original world where they both were. As Shang is lying on the ground injured and standing before him, Shang Guyu says he can never accept betrayal. This is the Achilles heel of all mortals. After this, she calls Wooly, but Wooly doesn't respond and stands silent. Then, she orders Wooly to destroy Shang's body before her. Wooly takes out her sword, replaying yes as requested, moves toward her, and stabs that sword into her body. Seeing this, Shang Yuji shockingly asks why she dares to disobey her order and starts sweating. Holding Wooly's weapon, she asks why the spear pierced her skin and why he betrayed her, but Wooly still stands silent there. Then, Shang Jiyu angrily asks why she betrayed the Dragon Clan. Wooly pulls back her sword from her body and smiles, saying there is no particular reason. It's just that she took the initiative to expose her weakness to her, that is all, and then they enter into a different world, where the Golden Eye appeared, and this was the perfect mimicry of the Great Dream Realm, and Wooly stood before it. Shang Yuji falls backward and flinches, asking about perfect mimicry. Then she asks if this is reality, and then thinks that the dragon can't disobey its ancestor. In this illusionary world, she got hit by that kid's mimicry skill, she can't accept this. She starts trembling by thinking it's impossible no matter how she feels about it, and it can't be. Meanwhile, Wooly comes near her, putting his hand on her head, and asks Shang Yuji what exactly is the kingly way she practices. She looks up toward Wooly. Then Wooly asks if it is about one person dominating everything. Words and action, life and death, she controls everything under heaven, and then she is gravely mistaken. Then Wooly reverted to her authentic appearance, and where Wooly stood before her, she turned into Shang because Shang stabbed that sword into Shang Yuji's body. Then Shang, standing before her husband and on her head, says the king the people need is the true king. The remnants of ancient emperors stuck around farmers whose land was taken away by native people who had been self-sufficient for thousands of years. Invaders are eyeing the country of focus and then asking for domination. He has never dominated anyone. Saying this, he cracked her head, and then he pressed it hard on the ground, saying it is their need and hopes that have made him kingly way. Sheng pushes her head so hard that even the foundation cracks, and she starts trembling and bowing before him, saying King Wei and perfect mimicry, and then accepts that he is Xin Sheng. Then she started crying, saying he was Xin Sheng, that big lousy guy standing there. Wooly gets in doubt, asking the Lord if this is her. Sheng, standing there, told thousands of years ago that because of worldwide turmoil, the dragon was reluctantly attached to him to seek refuge. Many young dragons died in battle, and the Dragon Clan experienced a critical decline in generation. Then, 1,000 years ago, as soon as he was about to arrive in the Dragon Clan, they started to announce that Lord Xin Sheng, the end of their generation approaching, they were only a dozen years left at most. As soon as Sheng arrived, the dragon egg cracked and broke, and a small dragon emerged. The dragon baby comes out of that egg and requests him to complete the legacy of the dragon ancestor. As the oldest member of the new generation, Shang Yuji was too late to receive the legacy of the previous dragon ancestors. She had empty strength but without a gift of faith, neither evident in what direction to move forward. Essentially, she is just a child over 1,000 years old. Then he tells her to look towards Shang Yuji, and when she looks, he says that after getting tired from crying, she went straight to sleep. Then Shang smiled, asking her because she turned her back on his empire years ago, fearing that he would punish her now, so she deliberately fell asleep to escape. After this, Shang lifts her, saying that if that's the case, she is overthinking. Then he goes from there, and Wu Li follows him. While on the way, Shang Gui, when the matter of the Bailey Empire is over, she will have to teach her the king's way personally. However, Shang replies this is his duty as a king and a fault he must make up for. After this, they went from there, with Wu Li driving the car and Shang sitting beside her. Also, the vehicle was flying in the air without wheels. In the car, Huaxulai was sitting in the back seat, and suddenly, he saw Shang Yuji sleeping near him. Seeing her there, he gets frightened. Thought, holy shit, she is Diargon's ancestor, an actual dragon ancestor. If he messes with her, will he die a horrible death? Wu Li, driving the car, asks if the Lord has forgiven Diargon's ancestor for her betrayal. Shang replies by asking whether she thinks Shang Yuji has betrayed him. Then he turns his head, looking towards Shang Yuji, who says she ultimately chose to turn her back on his empire. It only shows that he can't maintain loyalty with his presence. He is still far away from the ultimate kingly way he pursues. She looks towards Shang, then Shang says that, contrarily, he did imagine that she might turn her back on him, Wu Li. Hear this, Wu Li gets surprised, asking why, and he asks if she remembers the first day he met them underneath the ruins. A grave robber took control of her with what she thought were artifacts. The toy's strength is even less than 70. She could easily break free with her power. But when she saw him appear, she just watched quietly. Later, they headed to Steel Art City, where he buried the ruins on the train. Hearing this, she thought Xin Sheng collapsed the ancient imperial ruins from this distance. How did he do it? Then Sheng said she didn't ask out of surprise but with speculation, and she continued to observe him in her heart. When she was keeping him, he was also watching her. Then he lifted his arm, looking toward her smile, saying that, at that time, he imagined that she could be a spy planted in the ancient imperial city by one of the forces of dragons, waiting for his return to deliberately approach him to achieve some purpose. So, on the way to Uter, he slowly probed her while reading a history book. Hearing this all, she was astonished, and then she remembered when she asked Sheng on the way to Uter if it was confirmed that the dragons were the first to turn their back, and she replied yes, but she couldn't fathom why the ancestors that time made such a decision. Then he pointed toward her, telling her answer was flawless, like a professional spy who had long prepared for a perfect solution. Hearing this, she gets restless and thinks it uneasy and says that looking up, that's why he specifically brought her along on this trip to the Bailey Empire. Only to his surprise, it soon proved that his fears were superfluous. However, Shang Yiji, sleeping in the back seat, starts trembling while seeing this dream that Shang is holding that gold brick in his hand, and she is requesting and asking for that brick, but he is saying he will give it to her. While Sheng tells Wu Li that he has watched Shang Yuji growing up in a dragon egg, she can't think of planning a secret spy with her sophisticated mind. After this, Sheng looks toward Huaxulai and asks Wu Li. She gives Huaxulai the advice to invite him to enjoy the flowers today. Hearing this, he is stunned. Then he tells Huaxulai that when he says he doesn't like chrysanthemum cherry petals, his line of sight is already exposed. Sheng talks about the time when Huaxulai was staring at Wu Li. Then, while looking toward Wu Li, he says she would suggest that to Huaxulai, presumably after Shang Yuj had already contacted her quietly after coming to the Empire, and she was ordered to do that. That's her character. Wu Li, despite having good strength, she has no idea where her path would lead her. She observes to make sure that the other person is credible, and then he asks as a stray dragon if it is easier to follow in the footsteps of a trustworthy person. Hearing this and remembering that time, Wu Li hesitates to repay, but she doesn't complete her sentence. However, Sheng completed that sentence, saying don't know either. Then Sheng smiled, saying see this kind of Wu Li. That's what he was rambling about before, wasn't he? Hearing this, she blushed and stayed silent as they were talking the whole way, and finally arrived at the checkpoint of Bailey Empire. As soon as they reach there, Sheng tells them the doors are locked, the accelerator is stepped on, and their car expands in the air with the help of Sheng mimicry. Sheng smiles, saying that today, they will create big news and let the world know that the wicked ancient demon king has abducted the ancestor from the Bailey Empire. However, the soldiers standing are entirely shocked to see the flying car, and they surprisingly ask one another if a suspicious, unidentifiable vehicle is trying to force its way through the checkpoint. After this, they creak their weapon and clank their missile, saying under the national defense law, the right to open fire is granted. They started firing toward the car through the rocket while ordering the soldier to shoot the car down. However, an explosion occurred, but the car safely passed by the checkpoint area in the air, while Huoxu Lai, sitting in the car, started trembling, saying he was going to die. Wooly turns and looks toward him, but Sheng looks toward Wooly, although speaking in front of the current dragon ancestor is a bit inappropriate. Then he extends his hand toward Wooly, saying that after her elders have lived to the end, she can be the next dragon ancestor. After this, Sheng smiles, saying whether it is the intellectual education of the crown, and the cultivation of the strength of the strongest is not a problem in his case. Since she can't choose her path in life, he will open it up for her. Hearing this, she opens her eyes wide and gets uneasy. Then, ask what qualification a dragon like her has to be a dragon ancestor. Hearing this, he big laughs, while she blushes. Then while looking toward her, he tells her that Xin Sheng said her Wooly is the next dragon ancestor, which dragon under the heaven would she accept his offer. She could hardly control her tears and thanked him for this while Huoxu Lai, sitting behind, was trembling, asking why this had happened to him and why he had to take the blame. Sheng turns his head and then looks toward him. He smiles, saying that this time, with the help of Huoxu Lai, they have taken away many of the Empire's assets. This shelling is just a drop in the bucket compared to his profits. Lord Duke should not know what he has been quietly doing in the Empire. He will be surprised soon by hearing this Huoxu Lai with teary eyes, but what he is doing now is no different from treason as he was unloved his whole life. Hearing this, Sheng blinked his eyes and smiled, saying that there seemed to be this famous saying in the Balili Empire. Then, pointing toward him, Sheng says money has no motherland, and if he can't let go of what happened today, he will buy his homeland in the future. On the other side, in Duke Quexi mansion, Dao Zhen, sitting on the chair, folding his legs, tells Quexi she can't see that he is in a bad mood. While watching news updates, she saw the news of Sheng flying a car and entering the Balili Empire while hearing the news on her mobile phone. She says all the information today is about the abduction of the dragon ancestor. Their special mission bureau is also extremely busy. Then she asks, she is afraid the urgency of calling her there at this time isn't just because of the dragon ancestor, and things weren't supposed to go this way, Lord Duke. Hearing this, he squints and stays silent in anger as he has already broken many accessories in his room. After this, Dao Zhen, looking toward him, says when Lady Sheng first met with Huoxu Lai, she stated that her purpose was to the Empire's military industry stock. Telling this, she remembers when Lady Sheng asked Huoxu Lai who could help her in the Empire's stock market at the most suitable time to plunge off the Empire's military stocks. Then Dao Zhen says this is something she conveyed to him long ago, and Special Mission Bureau surveillance is everywhere. Discussing such things at the stock exchange is simply conspiring out aloud. Hearing this, Quaxi replies that he knows, and he has long spoken about this matter to the stock market and told them to keep a close eye on it. Therefore, even if the price of military stocks fluctuates slightly, it will be well within the normal range. Then he clenches his fist angrily, saying, however, Sheng Xin and Huoxu Lai invested wholly in the gold transaction and made a lot of money. Attacking their military stocks was simply a pretense. He just checked and found that they have sold off all their gold at the highest price. Hearing this, Dao Zhen swishes asking, meaning they hold only cash. Then she says the Empire's financial sector is #1 in the world. They have a million ways to make the money in their hands worthless. However, Lord Quexi angrily says that they purchased something else, celestial copper, while she stares at him blankly, and then he angrily says, cosmic copper is connected with the development of the Empire's military power, and is their scarce and vital strategic resource. Then, looking toward her, he angrily asks about the intelligence work of their particular mission bureaus in Stella's Art City. Isn't it also for the legendary celestial copper mine? After this, while looking out of the window, he gets furious, saying those morons of the Empire who managed cosmic copper sold all the cosmic copper that could and could not be traded. To catch this wave of military stocks and gold hype, do they still have national security in their eyes? Have they ever done anything but make money? Then he asked what military supplies and gold they were all tricked. Celestial copper was their real purpose. The celestial copper was traded to the north of the Sky Curtain Sea, which Steel Art City and Uter have substantially monopolized. That amount would be hundreds of billions of yuan, the wealth and market they took from the Empire. Telling this, Duke Quexi feels he is standing at the map, and a vast lady named Shen grabs her hand. Meanwhile, Dao Zhen tells him to calm down. Also, the celestial copper can't be fully traded on the spot. Go now and check the goods they have not yet taken and intercept them all. Furthermore, she has already investigated Lady Sheng and Huaxilai's accounts from the Northern Union Bank. Then she complacent, telling the North Union Bank was established under the Empire's leadership. All it takes is one phone call to freeze their asset, and they will be the winners in the end. Meanwhile, the president of North Union Bank calls her, and then she says he has realized how the Empire would respond before picking up the call. Then she picks up the call and starts chattering. She is surprised and asks him to say that again. However, a few days ago, the south-central part of the North Union state became the Principality of Serbia-Hungary. The Principality of Serbia-Hungary cabinet official Xiao Ying, who's standing on his ship watching with binoculars at the distant mountain, thinking that is the warship of the Balili Empire for a military exercise, although it's not in their territorial waters. And it looks like the kingdom is getting severe, and they don't know if their country will be forced to dispatch troops because of the military alliance agreement of the North Union, and no matter how he thinks about it, only the Balili Empire can benefit from fighting this war. Suddenly, a bubble started forming in the sea water near him. Seeing this, he was surprised, thinking about what was under the water. Suddenly, a ship emerges from the sea. Seeing it near them, the people on board the vessel start running in fear, telling everyone there that there is an unidentified submarine to get some help, and why neither their country nor the Imperial Navy found out. However, the ship's upper door opened, and Yang Yu came out, asking if this was the military port of the Principality of Serbia and Hungary. Please forgive their sudden visit because the situation is very urgent. Then, she courteously puts a hand on her heart and briefly introduces herself, telling her she is the plenipotentiary ambassador sent to their distinguished country by Yuder Chongyongyu. After this, she presented the letter informing him that she had an official letter of the state, and wished to start urgent negotiations with their distinguished country promptly. After this, Xiao Yinghu brings her to his mansion, and they start talking there. Xiao Yinghu, sitting on the couch before her, says he will formally protest Yuder afterward about her trespassing in their military port. Then he asks her to tell him what she wants to do by coming to their country at such a sensitive time. Anaju replies that she will not be vague since he is so straightforward. Steel Art City and Yuder plan to establish a new bank once their country joins so they can enjoy a vital shareholding status. Hearing this, Xiao Yinghu asks how she wants to eliminate the North Union Bank and get rid of the economic control of the Balili Empire before the war starts. Then he says, but unfortunately, the Serbian-Hungarian Principality will not join. Hearing this, Anaju replies they don't expect their military to join immediately. However, they are transferring the assets of Steel Art City and Yuder to North Union Bank. This matter can't be resolved without the help of their country. After this, Xiao Yinghu replies that it is true that the headquarters of the North Union Bank is located in their country, but she should understand one thing. They can't do anything without a nod from the Balili Empire. Hearing this, Yang Yu asks what he means to say it, as long as the Balili Empire approves. This matter can be straightforward. Xiao Yinghu smiles, asking in return, isn't that impossible? How could the Balili Empire agree to the impossible transfer of her assets? Meanwhile, Dao Zhen stepped in, telling this matter that the Principality of Serbia and Hungary could go ahead and do it. This is her opinion. He could take it as the Empire's words. Seeing her there and hearing her words, Xiao Yinghu was shocked, then blinked his eyes, headed down, and replied okay. Although he isn't aware of what is happening behind the scenes since she of the Empire has said so, he is looking toward Yang Yu. He says to give him a few days once the formalities are completed. The assets of Yuder and Steel Art City can be delinked entirely from the North Union Bank nominally. After this, Xiao Yinghu, rubbing his hand, asks her if she could tell him the new bank's name. Anaju said he would undoubtedly hear its name often in the future Xinsheng Bank. After this, Yang Yu smiled, saying they always look forward to having his country join them as one of the initiating countries. On the other side, in Duke Quexi's mansion, a red raven comes to him, telling the trader that he is the one who manages the Celestial Copper. The ones who control the North Union Bank and the Principality of Serbia and Hungary are all traitors. Hearing this, he angrily cracked his hand, and then Red Ravni, kneeling before him, asked Miss Dao Zhen what they should do next. Duke Quexi smiled, telling the Empire to seize the support from his territory. Then he asked what she thought should be done. After this, he taps his head, asking the ambassador, who is not a secret visitor and seems to be staying at the embassy of the Principality of Serbia, Hungary. Their worship also happened to be on exercises nearby as he was standing near the window and, in anger, broke many things in high living room. After this, he asked her how to tell the military guys to test the latest cruise missile control system on the warships. Red Raven uncertainly replies, but the Imperial Navy hasn't updated its electronic equipment and design in recent years. He turns back and then, clenching his fist, replies she should deliver the original message. In particular, they should be reminded never to play crooked. On the other side of the Yingluo Empire, the ground cracked near the information hub weapon Sheng created suddenly. From there, Lai digs out. As soon as she emerges from the soil, she sparkles and gets happy, thinking she is fully healed. Suddenly, she sees the information hub weapon, which is beeping, and a panel appears there. Then she goes near it. Considering one of their own is contacting through the information hub, it's a duty given to her by the little Lord Sheng. But how does it work? Meanwhile, an idea comes to her about the Fool Operation Guidebook. She gets that book thinking Operation Guide Fool Edition that even wild vines can understand. And then she excitedly started smacking that information hub weapon, pressing the button one, thinking, do a little bit of this and then do a little bit like that. Then she remembered the contact code she had set. She applied different codes, including L, Psi, and Fast, but these didn't work. After this, she calls Yangyu and asks her for the legend. She tells her the code, Kongru, and then Yangyu covers her face, thinking what a crappy secret code, such an inexplicable sense of shame. Then, Yangyu tells her to tell the master that the mission in the Principality of Serbia, Hungary, has been fully completed, and she didn't expect that a person from the Empire would be on their side hearing this. Ball Lily got excited and then asked that person which person. She doesn't know any of that. She only knows 100 that listen to Little Sheng. Hearing this, Anaju thinks it is right to have this person as the information hub administrator. After this, Ba Lily, flipping the Fool Operation Guidebook pages, tells Yangyu that little Lord Sheng has instructed. When she contacts the information hub, she should convey this message to her. As they both chatted, suddenly Yangyu got alert because she saw the missile approaching her. While Ba Lily was on the call, she said it was highly likely that the Empire would retaliate against them, which means it can't be predicted, but make sure to protect her. But Anaju didn't respond. On Sheng's side, he feels something rustling outside the window while Li comes there holding the tray of some sweets. He turned his head to look toward her, then she stepped toward him and asked Xin Sheng if he was worried about the counterattack from the Empire side. However, she places that sweet tray on the table, and Sheng, in return, asks. This can be seen through quickly, and she replies, although she may not be able to share his worries with her position and ability. Then she scooped the ice cream and fed it to Sheng, saying now he should relax. First, Sheng, holding his hand, thanked her, but he could eat it himself. After this, he starts eating that ice cream, and Li stands aside, blushing, thinking what a pity as he eats all the sweets. After eating it, he licks, feeling sweet, bringing moderate pleasure and calmness. Then he says that the Empire he knows does know how to act calmly, and he has snatched the Empire's celestial copper resources. The realm